big that they'll haunt you, or they'll calm you. That's how you know if you got it, go and get it, get to win and not conquer. I had to go out and get it without a sponsor. Kept it real, never crooked, yeah, that's honor. Now I can go out and get it how I want to. Hashtag bless, I choose.
Good morning, YouTube, Rumble, and Twitter. Today is May 10th. Welcome back to the Ryan Matta Show. Thank you for joining us today. If you could do us a huge favor, could you guys please swing down there and start this show off by smashing that like button? If you're over on Rumble, just swing down there and make sure that that green or grayed out thumbs up button turns green. We'd greatly appreciate it. We're going to be doing a great show today. I'm going to be having on a special guest. He goes by the name of Trey Sellers over on X at TS Hodl, HODL. So please swing over there again. That is at TS_HODL. And he is part of the Unchained.com team. So I'm not going to overtalk. I'm going to bring Trey on and let him introduce himself. Trey, welcome to the show, my friend.
Hey, Ryan. Nice to see you. Appreciate you having me on, man. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Man, it's an honor to have you on the show, man. Thank you for joining us. So I want to start from the beginning. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? Where'd you grow up at?
I grew up in Southwest Indiana, a town called Evansville, and got a younger brother. My parents still live there, and lived there through high school. Went to Indiana University after I graduated high school, and kind of started my career after that. Actually met my wife at IU, and she's from northern New Jersey, so we moved to Manhattan, lived there for a year, bought a condo in Jersey City, and lived and worked in New York and around that area for about 6 years or so. And then I'm currently in the Atlanta area. I've been here for about 10 years now.
So tell me a little bit about what was it like growing up in Indiana?
Well, so Evansville is kind of a big town relative to the other towns that are in Indiana, aside from Indianapolis and Fort Wayne and some of these other cities that are there. So, there's maybe like 300,000 people in and around. It's a little bit of country and a little bit of city, in there. And I had a great childhood, playing a lot of sports. I went to Catholic school all through grade school and high school. It was a really nice place to grow up. I really enjoyed doing the sports thing. Play a lot of baseball, play a lot of basketball, a little bit of football. I'm not really big enough for that, and kind of got started late. I wish I had started playing golf a lot earlier in my life, but I didn't really have somebody showing me the game. But that's kind of my main sports focus these days.
So you had mentioned Catholic school. Tell me a little bit about your parents.
My parents. So my dad is a retired radiologist. And he's from West Virginia. His whole side of the family is from West Virginia. He's full-blooded Italian. So I got half of that genes.
Yeah, so do I. I'm 50% Italian as well. Let's go.
His grandparents came over, through Ellis Island, and Sellers actually is a mistranslation of Solaro. So the Italian side of my family came over from a little town called Cedencia in southern Italy. And the name Solaro got, misdocumented, I guess, as they were coming through as Sellers. And so that's where that came from.
No way. Cool.
Yeah. My mom grew up in Kentucky, and they kind of found their way to Evansville after my dad had finished residency and started his career, found a job there at a hospital doing radiology work. Right. And so that's kind of how we ended up there. But they're very humble people, kind of, easygoing and, kind of keep to themselves, although they have quite a few friends. My dad's a golfer as well, is part of a local golf club and likes to play that. My mom had a stroke about 10 years ago or so. And so she's a little bit mobility limited after that. And so that kind of, changed the way that they started interacting with us and with people and all that. She needs a lot of help, which my dad is a saint for doing. But, they're generally happy people, and we love being able to hang out with them.
Have you ever asked them, what was their motivation for sending you to Catholic school?
My father grew up Catholic. My wife converted, sorry, my mom converted to Catholicism for him. And they wanted that Catholic upbringing, I guess, that influence in our lives. Not to mention, Catholic schools, generally speaking, are better schools in terms of the education relative to public schools or government schools. And so I think that was a key part of it as well.
And who would you say is the most influential person in your life, and how did they impact you?
The most influential person in my life now?
Now, could be in your past.
I mean, it has to be my kids, right? Like they kind of shape the way that I live my life on a day-to-day basis right now. In the past, definitely has to be my parents. My wife has had a lot of influence on me and the way that I've thought about the world as well. The reason that I moved to New York was because of her. And I'm super glad I did that, right? It was like a life experience that I never would have done if not for her. I really enjoyed living in the city. New York is a bit of a shit show sometimes in some regards, but it's also a really great place. And when there is a lot of liveliness there and a lot that you can't get anywhere else. And so, I'm really grateful that I had that life experience there. I think that kind of rounds it out in terms of like influences on like my day-to-day life. From an intellectual standpoint, I kind of, so my parents have always been kind of on the Republican side. My dad's a Trump guy for sure. My mom is as well.
Let's go, man.
So
I already like your parents more and more, man. They're getting cooler by the second. We can throw up the ultra MAGA background for you if you want.
and we have a bit of a I don't know, playful relationship with the politics side of things, because I'm about as hardcore of a libertarian as you can be. And so I kind of hate both of these sides equally.
Yes.
So hate is a strong word, but you know what I'm getting at. Like, I don't think any of these people should be in power to tell other people how to live their lives and how to get along and what they can and can't do and all that, I'm definitely a freedom maximalist, which is in large part why I love Bitcoin so much, because it's freedom money.
Yes, sir.
So, I kind of fell or trailed along in that Republican or conservative train of thought through high school or whatever. And then I guess through college, but I didn't really care, too much. Like, you're in college, you're
partying, you're chasing girls,
enjoying life, like
drinking beers.
What's you're not really paying attention to that, generally speaking. Although I don't know, maybe the culture has changed since I went to school. I graduated in 2007, and so which is an interesting year to be graduating and coming into the workforce right before the great financial crisis. But but because of that timing, I started working, and somehow Ron Paul came across my feed, and that kind of started the journey of really digging into the libertarian side of things, the anarcho-capitalist side of things, which followed on from that. And I read a ton of Rothbard and Mises and all of those, key players in that movement. And that really has shaped the way that I think about the world and I think about, politics and all that kind of thing.
Tell me a little bit about what it means to be a libertarian. You say libertarian. What does that mean? Is like your broad understanding of like, what does it mean to be a libertarian versus being a Republican or conservative?
Yeah. The way I think about it is that your relationships in your personal life, and that extends to the public life, so to speak, should always be consensual, should always be something that you opt into as opposed to being forced to at the point of a gun. And that really is what politics is. That really is what government is, right? Is forcing compliance at the point of a gun. If you don't comply, you will eventually, if you continue not complying, it could be a parking ticket, right? That could escalate to you ending up in jail, or if you resist that arrest, ending up dead, right? So, it is social cooperation by force, and it's always suboptimal from an economic standpoint, because if you have to force somebody to do something that they wouldn't have otherwise freely chosen to do, then it's by definition suboptimal there. But that's kind of beside the point, right? There's a moral aspect to this, which is that if I'm a free person and you're a free person, then I have no right to tell you that you can't ingest certain things, or you can't spend your money the way that you would like to, or make your money the way that you would like to. Now, obviously, there are constraints on that, because in order to be logically consistent, that has to end somewhere, and that ends at your right to be able to protect yourself and protect your property and your body and your being and your family and all that kind of thing. So there's obviously nuance that comes at play, but the general line of thought here is that there should not be some coercive state or coercive apparatus sitting over the top and orchestrating people's lives and telling them how they can and cannot live. And this is a moral thing. It's the economic side of things. Building an economy is kind of beside the point.
And do you think we can ever get back to a point in America where we have a libertarian president?
No. I'm generally an optimistic person. I don't think that, this obviously exists on a spectrum. I generally think that the way things are organized right now, the structures that we have in place, have to lead to more and more control. Mm-hmm. It is a survival mechanism that more control must accrue to the top, to the point where it becomes maybe unwieldy, or people just kind of stop putting up with it or start ignoring it. You need to have a lifeboat or a way to opt out. That's what Bitcoin represents to me. It kind of strikes at the heart of the power that people have when they are part of this coercive apparatus, because it takes away their funding, right? Their funding is coming from a money that is very much controlled, and this happens on a spectrum, of course, right? Certain governments have more control over currency and others don't. But the fact that this apparatus is in place allows them to extract more wealth toward, and with that wealth comes power toward this small elite group of people. And a lot of this is called the Cantillon effect, right? Mm-hmm. Where if you're closer to the money printer, you have more ability to grab that newly printed money. And the effects of that on the rest of the population don't manifest for a while. It takes a little while for it to work its way through the system. And so those people who are closer to the spigot accrue more wealth and more power because of that relationship that they have. And in Bitcoin, that can't happen, right? Because you can't print new money. Mm-hmm. Bitcoin is unyielding in its fixed supply, and the fact that nobody controls it means nobody can print more. So that, as I said, really strikes at the heart of the power apparatus that is out there. And I see a movement toward Bitcoin as the money, the global reserve currency or asset, or just the money that we use every day, represents a power shift back to individuals and away from collectivism and the coercive state.
So you're saying that we're basically in a system that's incentivized. It incentivizes theft, and the closer you are to the money printer, the more that theft benefits you. And in order to keep that system going, you have to continuously steal more and more and more to keep that operation going. Am I understanding that right?
The goal is control and theft, is to extract as much wealth from the population as possible while keeping the balance of that control tipped in your favor. Meaning, if you just come out and start, like you could round up a bunch of people and just take their stuff, take their house or whatever, right? But you're going to face a lot more resistance than if you put a system in place where they've got to force to be used a currency that you can print at will. And in doing so, you're able to extract wealth over a long period of time that compounds without stifling the economic progress that creates that wealth in the first place, and without hopefully creating the types of rebellion that can happen if you tighten the noose too far, or if you go too far in one direction or another. So you've got to, if you lose control and people start getting really upset and realizing how much they're being stolen from, that creates a lot of like pent up anger that can eventually overflow into rebellion. And you don't want that either, because that threatens your power, and it threatens this wealth extraction methodology that has been put in place for so long. So there's a healthy balance that any state operation, or even these like international organizations, try to balance, so that you can make sure that you're extracting as much as possible, not killing the golden goose, and keeping things orderly, so that you can continue to do so. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it absolutely did. So what are your thoughts on the fact that it seems like, from my perspective, every day we're watching more and more people, or I am, people on TikTok, Twitter. These are like your everyday 9-to-5 college students, nurses, doctors. These don't look like your hardcore Bitcoiners, anarchists. These are like your middle-class 9-to-5 workers that are like, every day it's a new video about somebody like our government stealing from us. I can't believe I was asleep. I had my head in the sand. I can't believe I trusted my government. It seems like they're tightening that noose. It's getting to a point where it's getting so tight that they're risking losing control, as you would say. What are your thoughts on the rate, I guess, that noose is getting tied? Do you think that we're going towards a breaking point?
I don't know that.
Question.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen a lot of those clips, and they get a lot of play, and a lot of engagement and stuff on socials. I don't know that fully represents the way that people actually feel across the country, right? Like, I certainly don't see it, and maybe it's just in my bubble, in my social circle, but I certainly don't see that around me. I think it represents a microcosm, and there's definitely some cracks in the foundation there. But does that mean that we're at a tipping point where people are just completely fed up and ready to completely overturn the system? I don't see that. It certainly will, the more and more this continues, the more and more of those cracks I think we'll start to see. And maybe you get some pockets of people who are just kind of fed up, and really what happens, I think, is that larger events, like things like we saw with Silicon Valley Bank, early last year, these are trigger points that cause a certain portion of people to kind of wake up from that sleep you're talking about, right? And look at things a little bit differently, and just say, oh, well, I've always trusted my bank. Maybe there's a reason that I shouldn't necessarily trust my bank, right? So you're right that when they start putting in more controls or start shutting people's bank accounts off or whatever, that's absolutely going to have an impact on the way that certain people view the world. And a lot of times, that's a ratchet effect that you can't undo.
Say zip tie.
Or at least you can't undo it quickly. It lasts for a little while. It's funny because we have this super divided type of political establishment, seemingly on the surface at least.
Oh yeah.
And
Yeah, on the surface for sure.
um, it's very much divided, I think, at like the general population level. It's not so divided at the higher echelons. Although Trump certainly represents a kink in that process, and did, you know, years ago when he first came into office, and really caused a lot of problems for the way people were, people within those circles were thinking about their power structure, because he just wasn't saying the things that they wanted him to say. And ultimately it seems like they were able to kind of like keep that contained. They've got a lot of really good methods for doing so. I don't know that Trump coming back into the presidency will have any better effect or worse effect than it did the previous time, right? Like, we already had 4 years of that. We know exactly what those tactics would look like to kind of stop him from widening the Overton window or having more people think about that. Although, like, there's so much more of a fervent base for Trump now these days. Maybe that has grown significantly. It certainly seems like it has. And then you've got this history of the anti-Trump movement and 4 years of all of this. So like, this division continues to grow. What worries me the most, I think, is, you know, if Trump were to win again, and they actually let him win, and they actually, like, you know, inaugurate him again, there was so much animosity between like the Trump supporters, and I'm just talking about the general population, the Trump supporters and the anti-Trump people, that like still is there today. Like, you see these people going at each other. Like, it's not a healthy dialogue between people. Like, there's a very clear dividing line that can cause a lot of problems, right? Like, people lose friends, people lose family. We saw a lot of that. That's what concerns me the most. You know, just for like my social setting and that kind of thing. I live just outside of Atlanta. Atlanta is a very different city inside the city than it is outside. And in the area that I live, it is, you know, very clearly like blue versus red. and I say versus in a kind of tongue-in-cheek way. It's not like people are fighting each other in the streets, but there's a very clear difference in the way that people in the city align on the political side versus people outside the city. But of course, there's like pockets within each, you know, it's a Venn diagram type of thing with a little bit in the center in each spot. And so you can get these like flare-ups. That's what concerns me, because I don't want my kids seeing a lot of that, or feeling like they're losing friends because their parents have difference of opinion on, you know, one coercive government apparatus versus another. And really, like, the way I view this is two wings of the same bird of prey. Sorry for the ramble there.
No, I dig it, man. I always like hearing other people's viewpoints on this. Do you think that there's ever been a president in modern U.S. history, let's say in the last 30 years, that's done more for the American people than President Trump?
Well, Trump shut down the entire economy for a while. Like, that was his doing.
100%.
At least at the beginning of it.
100%.
That wasn't good, right? He added more debt than any other president before him. And then Biden, of course, came in and did that. But that's a pattern, right? Like, this is what I'm saying. There's not really a difference. Like, Trump had a lot of flair to the way that he approached things. What really happened that was like beneficial and long lasting in a way that benefited the broad population? I don't know that. I don't know. Help me out here.
So what you're looking for, like what Trump did during his administration that was beneficial to,
that was strongly beneficial and long lasting. that would put, kind of put us on a better course.
Yeah, give me 1 second. Let me pull it up here.
Sorry, I don't mean to put you on the spot.
No, don't.
Just,
I actually wanted to kind of go over this with you because I kind of had the mindset I was never a Trumper until 2020, until 2022, right? Or 2021, like after the election. I voted for Trump, right? And it was right after the FTX collapse, right? And I started to see the two sides of government, right? And I started to see the fake news, right? We'd always hear Trump, and it was like, I always like, why does this guy keep going on about fake news, man? Like, what is he? Just let it go, bro. So I went and I started to, after I seen the FTX collapse and I seen Fox News telling me that this guy's Bernie Madoff, and then I see CNBC tell me that Sam Bankman-Fried's just a kid who made a few mistakes. And I was there. I mean, like anybody that lost money on FTX, like shame on you, right? Like we profited. I mean, we made tens of thousands of dollars shorting that coin. Like there was a 2-week window where we knew it was collapsing. Like you could see the Bitcoin leaving exchange. You've seen the balance coin is like all the Bitcoin on FTX was gone. And there were still trades that were taking place. And so everybody that deposited had taken all their money out. And somehow there was still Bitcoin on that exchange. And we're like things just weren't adding up. So I was like, okay. And then I went to watch I was like, okay, maybe I'll go do some research and see what Trump was talking about. Like, Googled or YouTubed like most famous President Trump speech or best Trump speech of all time. And it took me to the 2020 World Economic Forum speech. And I went to play it. And before I could play it, an ad prompt up. And I could not skip this 1-minute ad of Hillary Clinton. And it was like about January 6th and the insurrection and how 4 more years, get real. And it was Hillary's voice. And I was just like, holy shit. Like I'm trying to watch. And this is
she just will not go away.
Will not go away. So then I jumped over on, and after I watched this speech, I was so mind blown at what an amazing speech it was. Because that time now I'm kind of starting to learn about the World Economic Forum and how there's this globalist elite faction that's basically trying to depopulate the world. And I started to really study what Trump did. So I went over and I just started to go, okay, well, what did Trump do, right? Like what lasting change, right? And so I said, so during his unprecedented economic boom, Americans gained 7 million jobs, more than 3 times the government's projected. Middle-class families' income increased by nearly 6,000. That's more than 5 times the gains during the entire previous administration. The unemployment rate reached 3.5%, which is the lowest in over half a century. Achieving 40 months in a row of more job openings than job hirings. More Americans reported being employed than ever before, nearly 160 million. Jobless claims hit nearly a 50-year low. The number of people claiming unemployment insurance as of the share of the population hit the lowest in record. Now, this is the one that got me, right? No president has done dick for any other community besides themselves and their rich elite friends, let alone the black community. You can take this a step further. Like, look at what Mr. Beast did. Mr. Beast went and took, I think it was a couple $1 million, and he went and dug like 160 wells in Africa, and he gave clean drinking water to a large population of Africa for a few $1 million, right? Well, in the last 10 years, we've given Africa over $10 billion. So if $1 billion would have provided clean drinking water to every single village in Africa, why wasn't it done? Where's that money going?
That
right?
money doesn't go to the villagers, right?
No.
Like it goes to the governments there.
So check this out: unemployment rates for African Americans, Hispanics.
Ryan, like you're quoting a bunch of statistics out there that Biden currently quotes. Unemployment rate, like there's a whole bunch of things there that are not exactly accurate.
That's true on Biden, that's for sure.
That are not adjusted for inflation. It's like, okay, you're the average wages, I think you said, right? Rising by $6,000.
What did the cost of living go up at that period of time?
Yeah, exactly. Like there's a whole bunch of money printed throughout the Trump term there. Shutting down the economy was the worst possible thing you could do.
Absolutely.
For economic growth.
Yeah, that caused a $7 trillion injection of liquidity to recover from that shutdown. And absolutely destroyed supply chains for a very long time that were still, recovering. The inflation wins that Biden is, touting as a victory, which is all noise too, right? Like it's just slowed the rate of price increases, assuming that you're
taking CPI as the number to follow, and that's a good number. But that's a layup win for him to be, and the media that supports him, that otherwise wouldn't be there if the inflation wasn't there to begin with. And the inflation was driven by massive amounts of money printing and shutting down the economy, right? So not to mention just the moral aspect of having a government powerful enough to shut down people from going and earning a living, right? The number of people who were struggling to make ends meet because they were prohibited essentially from making a living, from going outside of their house, from going to the office, from like doing the things that would create wealth for them and their family.
Trey, I went to school full time, spent 5 years building a business on top of working full time, on top of being a new father for 5 years. 3 years of which I worked literally like 100 hours a week, 120 hours a week. There were some days where I only slept 4 hours a day for the entire week. Built the second largest growing EDM clothing line in America. And in March of 2020, I had finally hit that pinnacle, that peak where I was doing $175,000 a month in sales. My first month of getting a $50,000 profit check. That was the first time I was actually going to be able to pay myself. The next month, I went from doing 125,000 to negative 5,000.
Yeah.
The government completely crushed my business that I built. I literally gave everything, every ounce of everything I had. I made a bunch of money in crypto back in 2017, invested that into this business, had inventory in 3 different countries, in Amazon warehouses in 3 different countries. I was taking this thing global. So yeah, they crushed me. You're 100% right. How do you prevent a government?
That's a really awful story to hear, and it's not the only one that's out there, right? There were so many businesses, so many restaurants that were like just scrambling during that time because of the way that this was approached, and so even taking those other numbers at face value, like in my mind, that well overshadows any other progress that was made up to that point. Right? So like all of those statistics happened before the biggest mistake or the biggest negatively impacting thing there. And in Trump's defense, on not on COVID, but on other things, like the best thing that I enjoyed about Trump and about the way he spoke about things was the way he talked about foreign wars and America first, and stopping like the just brazen bombing around the world. I don't think he really, approached it from too much of like the moral side of things, like this is just wrong. But the effect of that talk is the right way to do it, which is, why are we focused on these ongoing campaigns that cost trillions of dollars when we've got so many problems here at home? We're forcing people to pay for these adventures overseas that are destroying countries and innocent people's lives. And what are we getting out of it? Nothing. Like there's zero to show for the past 25 years of Afghanistan and Iraq and Yemen and all over the place, right? Syria. Thank you. Yes.
Now Israel, now Ukraine.
And so, that part of Trump's rhetoric really appealed to me. And that part of Trump's rhetoric is why they hated him so much.
Absolutely.
That is what, in my opinion, that is what caused them to go after him as hard as they did.
100%.
That stance from a president is something that cannot be abided, right? But anyway.
So taking a look at during Trump's presidency, you had the directors of the NIA, the director of the NSA, the director of the CIA, the director of the FBI, all colluding with him to basically undermine his presidency and basically kind of frame him and set him up. So on top of all, I think there was a lot of good that he was trying to do, but because of the machine, like inside the beast, the bureaucracy, the fact that you can't fire government employees, like he was trying to lay off like half the regulators. What are your thoughts on his policy on regulations? For every one new regulation, they had to take away 2, but they actually were taking away like 3 to 8. I don't know if you've seen the picture of like all the regulations. Trump was really anti-regulation. What are your thoughts on like what he was trying to do?
I'm generally anti-regulation as well.
Me too.
I think the free market regulates in the right way. That government regulation can only hurt, or it can only kind of instantiate something that was already being done by the private market and private contracts anyway. And the reason that it was being done is because it's beneficial for both parties. So, as local as you can make that stuff, I think is better. That's absolutely a great stance. But as you said, like there's only so much that you can do when this apparatus exists and is able to be undermined.
So I guess, we're kind of at a point where I don't know what your opinion is, but like if we don't get Trump back in office, I don't know if there's anybody that can, fuck, I can't even say it on YouTube. Yeah, you guys come join us over on Rumble. Let me pause this over here on YouTube for a second so I can say exactly